Yeah, baby, we're back. Greetings and salutations. Today, we're going to mount a MaxxFan on the roof of the van. So I got to cut another big old 14-inch hole in that sucker. And, forgive me for no videos lately, but I've been under the weather for the last couple of weeks, and this is the first day that my voice actually sounds halfway decent. But since we've already cut holes in the van before with the windows and the air conditioner, I don't really need to show you that now, but so we'll just kind of gloss over that a little bit with a nice little montage. But, and I thought about not even putting up a video on this because there's a million videos on this, but I did notice something for the install after going through the instructions and watching a few videos that might actually be beneficial to you if you're looking to do your own van. So once I get to that portion of that, we'll start talking a little bit more. But, it's time to quit yakking and get cracking. I got another hole to cut, and I really would like this to not take all day. Let's do it. There's another big old hole. Yeah. So what I learned about the MaxxFan is that the flange up top installs with sheet metal screws. Therefore, that leaves the screws sticking out of the metal. And I'm going to want to frame around that later, but once I put lap sealant and all that stuff in there, it's going to be a mother to get those screws out. So that way I can do framing up there later. So the plan I have devised for this is I have built this crusty little frame. And I didn't do a very good job at it, but that's okay. All I need is for screws to run into something. So I'm going to put E6000 on the back of this guy, clamp it up here, and let that set up for a little bit. And then when I go to install the flange, the screws can go into the wood also, which will give it a little bit of reinforcement as well. Which I don't think that this is going to bounce around a whole lot, but I didn't think that about the air conditioner or the windows either. So anyway, just going to put a bunch of this old E6000 all over this guy. It's easier said than done on camera. So I'm going to put a bunch of glue on the back of this and stick it up there. I just got it clamped all the way around. So I'm gonna go read the instructions on there real quick and see how long before that can tack on its own. But I got a trick before it cures. Stay tuned. Now, while I wait for that to cure, let me give you an update on the spare tire carrier. Check this out. Remember how I was telling you it was flopping around like crazy? Well, I braced it, and it was pretty cool. Here we go. Let me show you. So the pillar I took off the window, I have JB Weldon pop riveted that guy in there, which if I'd have been thinking, I should have just tack welded that in, but if it comes loose, we'll address that then. And then I got some longer bolts here and ran them in there. And I made, you can see it right there, that is some tubular steel. I've got a washer on this side, I got a washer on that side, so that provides support in between, and then run my nut on there. And so far so good, that's worked really well. I figured you might like a little update on that one. So that crap is still setting up a little bit, so I'm gonna give it a little bit more time, and then we'll get up top and put that flange on, and then put that fan on. I'm a little impatient and want to get cracking. I can hear it's still a little tacky, but I think I got an idea. That sounds dangerous. I'm going to take these side ones off. I got some of these little support poles. See, these just kind of, see this long pole goes on the floor, and this side goes up top. Make sure I get it square. Crank it. And crank it kind of tough, kind of hard. Let's go this way with it, so that way I can get it around the ribs, and you just push that up like a caulk gun. That ought to support that. I don't want to put too much. I don't want to put too much pressure on it because then it'll bow it outward. But at least that way it'll hold this up there until I get ready to screw that stuff in. That ought to hold it up there. I reckon that's got us pretty solid. We'll get up there and put that flange on now. Okie dokie, everything seems to be holding. So we're going to put butyl, we're going to test fit the flange, and that fits beautifully. And so remember, when you install these little guys go out to the sides, because that's where it's going to mount, right here on the side of the MaxxAir pan. So now let's put a little butyl on the bottom of that flange. We'll just turn it upside down here. Seems to be good enough spot. So this is 1-inch butyl tape, and I'm just going to go around the edge here. That's just going to give it some extra, a little extra seal. Butyl tape is on, and we're going to flip it. Remember, these little guys go out to the side and kind of get it centered in there. And the nice thing too is whenever I cut this out, I wound up cutting all the ribs out, so I didn't wind up having to compensate for those, so that's a good thing. Get that in there. And she's stuck down. Well, it didn't take much to stick that. Now here's the sheet metal screws that go in there. And they're going to be just long enough. They shouldn't poke through, but if they do poke through a little bit, it's not a big deal. But also too, since I'm using just 1x4 furring strips down there, and these are just pointed like so, you have to pre-drill all these holes and then screw it in. So what I'm going to do is, since I have my supports down in here, I'm going to go ahead and start here and pre-drill these and screw these in, so that way it holds the frame up really well. Now remember, when you're drilling pilot holes, you make sure that the diameter of the screw shaft is bigger than your drill bit, or vice versa. You make sure your drill bit shaft is smaller than your screw shaft. We'll just get a slit and chip that down to the metal, but that's okay. I'll just make sure lap sealant gets on that. The flange is in, and I know that's watertight as it is. I feel the screws just barely sticking out of the wood in the bottom, but that's not a big deal at all. Don't really care about that. And the nice thing about that is that wood gives it a little bit more for those screws to bite onto. Now we're going to put lap sealant all over this. So, this is the back of the fan. Of course, the other side would be the front. In order to do this, to get this guy in here, you have to open the fan. So that way you have access to your screw holes here and here. So we're going to open this guy up. Put it down in the hole. Go. Hand start my screws. Now we can take the packaging band-aids off. How about that? That's probably the easiest thing that I'll ever install in this van. Everything else is going to be much more difficult. If it hadn't been for waiting for the glue and all that stuff to set up, that probably would only take me about 20 minutes. But I had to wait for glue to set up. But I'm glad I put this up here. There's just some little tiny bit of the screws poking out, just the tip. That's all. But and I'm not worried about that, because this frame will get built up a little bit more over time, because I'll be putting furring strips here, and then I'll tie all that in with this as well, so that way everything's nice and stable. So let's get these guys off. There we go. She's all installed. Yay. Then later on, once we get the ceiling up in here, we'll put the nice ring up in here, make it all pretty like. But for now, I'm gonna go ahead and shut that down. And there we go. Nice little MaxxAir fan. It's in. It's done. Yeah, I would have really have loved to have been able to do that last weekend, but hey, you know, when you're sick, you're sick. Things just going to take a little time, that's all. Not too big of a deal. It was a hot son of a bean dip mother Frito out there today, so I'm all sweaty and gross now. But that's okay. I mean, you got to get dirty doing this stuff, right? So anyway, I know that there's about 5,000 YouTube videos out there of how to install a MaxxAir fan. And so I'll just throw mine in the mix out there too. But the vast majority of them I saw is everybody just screw their flanges right into the sheet metal and just let the sheet metal hold on to everything. You know, that's all fine and dandy, but you know, I like the idea of running my screws into some wood too. It gets a little extra bite, and that's just going to make it easier when I start doing the framing in here, because I could imagine trying to sit there and fight all that around all those screws sticking down there. And I didn't want to try to undo it later after I put lamp sealant in all the heads. So, but it's done, and it's not that big of a deal. If you're afraid to do it, don't be afraid. It's pretty easy. Pretty much any old dummy can do it. It wasn't too bad as long as you're not too scared to cut a big hole in the roof. But everything's pretty self-explanatory. All that being said, too, we're going to go ahead and switch gears as well. I was going to do the rack on the roof and then the solar panels, but I think we're going to just go ahead and switch gears and do a subfloor and start framing this guy up in here, because that little air conditioner right there bounces around like crazy. That old dirt road out there is rough, and I'm watching that thing in the rearview mirror, and I just cringe every time I go to work every day, because I just watch that thing bounce and flex, and even those two supports right in front of it, it didn't stop them from flexing. And of course, since I took out the pillars to put in the windows, those things wobble in and out. So we're just going to make sure that this guy gets good and solid, because I'm tired of that. And I'm just kind of afraid that that air conditioner right there is going to sustain a little damage from all the bouncing around. I know it probably won't, because it's made to go on a vehicle that's going to go on bumpy roads and such. But, you know, peace of mind for me, much for the same reason why I put the wood frame up in there and ran all those screws. So, yeah. So here in the next week or two, maybe even 3, depending on how I'm feeling and all that stuff like that, we'll get cracking on the subfloor in here and the framing. So hang around for that. Meanwhile, now that I'm done with this, I gotta go inside and repair the living room floor. We had a little bit of a flood, so yay. When it rains, it pours. So you guys enjoy, and I'll catch you on the next one. I'll see you later.